Molly Jane is a little girl. She was stubborn, funny, willful. She was a ball of fire. Any child dying is hard. A child being taken in a violent way adds a layer of hardness.
Statistics show 1 in 5 females are victims of sexual assault.
You know, people don't understand how many people are affected by it. So very few rapists are ever held accountable, and that has to change.
Less than 1% of attackers are prosecuted. And when you look at the percentage of people that are actually prosecuted, you have to put that in the scope of how few women actually report the crime.
90% of survivors in the state of Texas do not report their sexual assault.
It's the most underreported crime there is.
A lot of things anger me about sexual assault. The fact that society as a whole wants to continue to believe the myth that those who report it are lying.
When a victim isn't believed, it's like they're being victimized twice.
Maybe even worse than the actual trauma of the sexual assault.
When someone's reporting sexual assault, the biology of trauma and how it affects the brain and the body, I think is really important to have empathy and compassion and understanding and not make people think that it has to do with, the person lying.
If a victim doesn't feel like they're believed, then they're not going to want to talk to the police.
The statistics show that somewhere between 2 and 8%, probably closer to 5%, are actually false reports. That aligns with any other false report on any other crime type. So sexual assault is no more falsely reported than any other crime.
The way that we approach victim blaming, we skip over common morality.
If it was any other crime type, the only response that we would have was, oh my gosh, that is terrible.
We don't ask victims of carjacking why they drove a nice car. Surely you had to know you were going to get carjacked.
We point the finger and we say what the girl should do or shouldn't do so that they don't get raped.
Some people think that they're not really victims because they were in a place where they shouldn't have been, or they made bad choices. We tell them, this isn't your fault. You didn't cause this. That perpetrator or that suspect is the one that did this to you. You didn't do anything wrong.
We're not going to stop sexual assault, but we can do way better in the way that we respond when it does happen and somebody does decide to tell their story. Molly Jane was a ball of fire. Someone who was wise beyond her years. She could make anyone laugh. She was a loyal friend. She was a devoted family member, always available to me to help out. Loved her brothers, was a cheerleader in all the things that they were involved in. We hung out a lot together. We rediscovered friendship in one another. We would go shopping. We loved to go out and eat together. Just spending time with her was something that I just thoroughly enjoyed. So it was April 10th, 2017. I was at home working, and I received a phone call that Molly had not shown up for work. So I decided I would hop in the car and drive to see, what was going on. There was no sign of Molly. I shouted her name, and when I rounded the corner into the bathroom, that's where I found her body. Things started to spin really fast and really dark, and I had to figure out how to call 911. I didn't know at that point. It was becoming very clear to me that she was dead. Eventually, the detective showed up and told us that they would be looking into the cause of her death. The following afternoon, he called and explained that they had ruled her death a homicide, that she had been strangled, and that she'd also been raped. It was more horrific than anything I could have imagined, any parent should ever have to imagine. I can't even put into words. I realized I've got to do something. I have to do my part to take this nightmare that has landed in our laps and use it to help bring change. So I said, I'm going to start a nonprofit. We launched Project Beloved on the 1-year anniversary of Molly's murder.
Tracy, when I think about her, I just think about bringing light out of the darkness. She wasn't going to be defeated, and she was going to turn something bad into something good.
I was overwhelmed at the grace that Tracy had after losing her daughter the way she did. Her faith was overwhelming to me.
I'm a mother of a daughter that was about Molly's age, and it's just heartbreaking. But then to have the strength to do what she's doing now, I just am in awe of her.
Project Beloved is a terrific nonprofit here in the city of Fort Worth that dedicates and puts all their time, effort, and energy and treasure into helping sexual assault survivors.
Our mission statement is that we strive to educate, advocate, and collaborate to change the conversation about sexual assault and empower survivors to find their voices.
Someone presents at an area hospital and they've been sexually assaulted. There are hospitals in the area that have what's called a sexual assault forensic exam program.
As a victim of sexual assault, your body is the crime scene. So all of the evidence that is collected is typically either on your body, whether that be in the form of clothing or the form of DNA. And it's very frightening to think of a forensic exam, what that even entails. You just had your darkest moments, and now you're going to have to repeatedly talk about it over and over again.
So our first initiative that we identified we could get involved with were the Beloved Bundles. When a survivor goes to the hospital, many times law enforcement wants to take their clothing as evidence. So the Beloved Bundle is in a string backpack, and it has clothing, it has undergarments, it has a hygiene kit, a stress ball, a coloring book, a pen.
It's a way of providing a small amount of dignity back to the victim who has just had so much taken from them.
Just something as simple as a hairbrush. We have victims say, oh my gosh, I brushed my hair and it made me just feel human again. It made me feel like I had some semblance of control back when I had lost all my power and control.
I wish everyone could see how they respond. A lot of times they kind of grab it with both hands and they'll say, can I keep this? Yeah, that's yours.
Someone might walk into the room with their head kind of bowed, and then as they walk out, the biggest reward that advocates see is that they have their head raised and they look like they have some semblance of hope. The Beloved Bundles help provide that hope to people in that process.
When I started studying sexual assault, I learned about a trauma-informed response. One of the things that I learned about is a soft interview room. And a soft interview room is basically taking cold, stark, and sterile, which is what most law enforcement interview spaces are like, and transforming them and giving them a facelift.
The room is very, very comfortable. There's a sofa table with a lamp and a picture of Molly Jane in the story.
Our soft interview room is definitely our favorite room. It's warm and it's joyful. She's got some bright colors in there. It just conveys that we think they're valuable and this is a safe place. It's got some fun things in there, like the dog's bed is in there, and it's got the squeeze balls and Beloved oils that Tracy put in there.
It helps calm the situation, and it kind of relaxes. It sets kind of a more non-confrontational type of environment.
It's much more comforting and doesn't feel quite so intimidating to a victim to be able to share their story.
I've seen that you're likely to get more evidence with a soft interview room. I've seen interviews go on there for hours with witnesses that prior instances couldn't last the duration of the interview. And so it makes a difference.
I get them to sit back and kind of relax a little bit and tell them why we're in there. It's an amazing room. It's a sense of it's like a big blanket wrapping them up and making them feel safe.
I think it's just the right thing to do too, just to care for that person.
I've had a survivor reach out and say that they've been interviewed in one of our soft interview rooms, and what an impact it was to sit in that space. Hearing from survivors, it means the world to me, and it kind of helps me to know that we're on the right path. Our third initiative that we established was to set up the Molly Jane Matheson Memorial Scholarship in Social Work at the University of Arkansas. Molly wanted to be a social worker. She wanted to work with troubled youth. She was going to be really good at it. And so this feels like, this is what Molly would want us to do, to help somebody achieve for themselves what she hoped to do for herself. And Studio Beloved, if I had an issue, almost any issue I could think of, I could figure out a group to go to, just sort of a place to be with survivors. I wasn't aware of anything. And so I thought, wouldn't this be cool if we could offer something like that? The time to come and participate in an activity that is art related, to offer something that hopefully by participating in it, there's going to be a positive response. We say a path toward healing, that it will just help put you on the path, keep you on the path, direct you to the path, and be a resource for survivors of sexual assault in Fort Worth. It was not long after Molly died that I was learning kind of all the background of what had happened before her death, and I was like, we need to write a law. So I contacted Representative Craig Goldman.
After the unfortunate murder of Molly Jane Matheson, her mother, who I grew up with, called me and said, we need to pass a law so this doesn't happen to any girl ever again in the state of Texas. That's a pretty big, a call to get.
People had prepared me and said, Tracy, very few make it through on their first try. And I'm thinking, I don't have 2 more years. It has to make it. I went to Austin and testified before the Homeland Security Committee in the House. It was actually on the 2-year anniversary of Molly's death.
It's not easy to pass anything. I can't stress that enough.
It, in fact, passed on its first time through, and the governor signed it September of 2019, and it officially became law in the state of Texas. Molly Jane's law mandates the use of VICAP in the investigation of sexual assault in the state of Texas.
VICAP is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, basically a state-of-the-art behavioral-based crime analysis tool that specifically focuses on homicides, sexual assaults, missing persons, unidentified human remains, and those type of cases that help law enforcement bridge the gap in communication.
Molly Jane's law makes police departments talk to one another. Now, they're required to make it known when people like this commit the crime that they're back out there on the street.
We had a very violent sexual assault in North Arlington at a park. He was a very violent predator. We entered that information into VICAP. If it wouldn't have been for identifying him through VICAP, would have committed other offenses. Molly Jane's law solved our case for us.
We've already been contacted by other states and how we pass the law and what it says and what it does.
If Molly Jane's law were a national law, I have no doubt whatsoever that we would make tremendous progress in identifying the worst of the worst.
It's the most important piece of legislation I've ever passed and will ever pass, in my opinion, no matter how long I'm there.
I know that Molly Jane is an angel looking down, helping others right now.
A world where survivors are heard, believed, beloved is a world where the trauma is kept to a minimum and the pain that follows is kept to a minimum so that healing can begin sooner.
If you're sitting in front of me, you're a survivor because you're here to talk to me about it.
When someone decides to share about something that happened to them, the first person that they tell is going to be the most crucial person in their process.
There's a program that's called Start by Believing. If somebody makes an outcry to you, help them by just being a sounding board for them.
When you can respond with belief and encouragement and support, that alters their healing trajectory in a positive way.
They can move forward with their life. They can see that they can be cared about and loved correctly.
A world where, again, the system works as it should. If it's going to happen, that they might feel believed and beloved through people who are doing their jobs and want to help them.
If you have a trauma-informed care towards a victim and you treat the victim with respect and you start by believing, that's going to be kind of the mirrored version of Project Beloved.
I want to know what the world looks like without a victim. When people stop assaulting people. But ultimately, I guess if I can't have that, then a world looks like people that are supported and can make the transition from being a victim to being a survivor.
I have what I call the beloved story. When I found Molly's body, I discovered that she had a tattoo and it said beloved. There are a few times in my life where I can say God has spoken to me. This is one of those times. He was really needing to get that message to me that she is with him, she was not alone, and that she is his beloved. And so that has sort of been the guiding principle for everything that we've done. Project Beloved. It just it feels right, and that's who we are.